Hello, everyone. It's Melody. I'm coming to you from my virtual space to shed some light on the digital processes of the Woman Life Freedom Movement in Iran, which ignited in the fall of 2022 after the brutal killing of Masa Amini by the state's mortality police. In this video, I will explain the relationship between technology and the movement, how this relationship has evolved, and the unique set of digital activism entailed.
آوار خونه های پوشالی برای احساس آرامش برای خورشید پس از شبای طولانی برای قرصای حساب و بیخوابی برای مرد میهن آبادی برای دختری که آرزو داشت
The song you just heard by Shervin Hajipur, Baraye, was written to explain why Iranians were protesting, symbolizing a longing for a normal life, freedom, and human rights. Leaving aside the structure and strategy of contemporary social movements and digital activism, the main focus is on the case of Iran and the Iranian women's movement. This will require addressing complex and dynamic relations of social media, state, and corporate control. This will address the systems of state led social repression, control, and state led corporate social platform control within the contents of the Iranian women's movement and the contemporary social movement. Part 1: The relationship between technology and the movement. What is the relationship, and how does social movement and technology come together? Social movement cannot do without visibility. Technology provided the architecture for that, and the organization to some extent. Given the movement's informal and non traditional structure and leadership, it was able to enact what Bennett and Sugarfer referred to as a connective action. The relationship is one of a decentralized mobilization where digital engaged citizens communicated, propelled, and organized protests, collectively constructed an identity or a movement around the hashtag Woman Life Freedom, also known as Zan Zindagi Azadi, and sparked mass protests. This relationship is profoundly creative. Scholar Asma Miha describes the Woman Life Freedom protests as the first counter revolution in which women pioneers digital feminist placemaking. Given the extreme risk in the physical streets, the cyber arena served as a new location for the protests. Using the cyber world, activists made and shared digital art, cyber graffiti, and illustrations of the protests to represent women's global solidarity. The movement's technology served not only to organize the movement, but also as the movement's canvas. Part 2: Change over time. Addressing the second question, how the relationship has changed over time, we see massive shifts in how citizens resist and how the state represses. First, the techniques of the resistance have changed. Prior to social media, the movements in Iran, including the 1979 revolution, relied almost entirely on physical protests, marches, and other mobilizations. In contrast, modern movements have become more sophisticated due to the availability of digital resources for cross border collaborations. When there is a high reliance on digital tools for coordination, social media platforms create a new vulnerability to profit driven algorithms and platform regulations that did not exist in the early internet activisms, as Cardi argues. The Iranian state's reply has also evolved to meet these new types of resistance. A few years ago, before the 2022 protests, the Iranian government implicated basic app censorship by filtering political relevant apps like Facebook and Twitter. Now, the Iranian government has begun digital warfare. Pega Banahashemi's research shows that a complete state run targeted internet blackout is used to cover police violence and prevent communication between people inside and outside of the country. Minimizing the use of new VPNs and internet speed suppressions in a targeted and in a massively misappropriated way to other ethnic regions such as the Kurds and the Sitan and the Baluchistan. In addition, the Iranian government is actively building a new infrastructure to create a new, isolated national internet. The Iranian government plans to remove total access to global internet, outlining a frightening new line of technological control. Still, there is a radical technological control and new government policies that show new technological control and warfare in the government response to the Iranian protests. Part 3: Opportunities and Challenges. This brings us to our final question. What are the opportunities and challenges social movements face when relying on these technologies? The possibilities are endless. With the aid of digital technology, state violence can now be recorded in real time. This allows state media narratives to be overthrown and an international audience and alliance with the Iranian diaspora to be established. The digital spread of slogans and images resulted in significant constructive and meaning-making processes, establishing an international community. Now, the question is whether the opportunities and challenges posed by new technologies is a cause of concern. The challenges are equally severe and multi-layered. Surveillance and harassment. Activists are particularly prone to the risk of digital surveillance and offline repercussions of online activities. There are also digital reprisals and regime-sponsored online harassment of activists. Economic obliteration. Access to the internet has become a necessary condition for the realization of fundamental human rights and the right to development. Beina Hashimi points out that the internet, especially social media, has become a crucial tool for the establishment of micro-enterprises by women in Iran. The regime's censorship and internet shutdown have deliberately and misproportionately targeted women's online businesses to economically control them and foster their independence. Uneven accessibility. Cardi poses that the unequal distribution of digital technologies can exacerbate social inequalities, in particular because the internet can be used as an oppressive tool against the vulnerable, marginalized, and poor. I'm going to show a short clip that highlights how the movement began and spread.
What came next were mass protests, initiated and led by women, that quickly spread across the country. Images of women defying local laws by cutting their hair in public and burning hijabs in the streets went viral. This, however, did lead to a bit of confusion in some places about whether the protests were anti-Islam and were simply about banning the hijab, something protesters and Iranians around the world have made very clear is not the case.
Whoever's thinking of it as though it's a war against hijab and Islam is very close-minded. They want the choice to wear the hijab, to not wear the hijab.
It's about people's choice to be Muslim or Baha'i or Christian or Catholic or Jew.
Some of the international coverage has also been criticised for implying that the protests are largely caused by and are mostly about economic problems. Again, something that many Iranians believe downplays the real reason why this movement started.
Been the result of poverty and bad economy and a lot about corruption. But this time around, protesters are way beyond policy criticism. You don't hear any slogans about the sanctions, lift the sanctions, or about American policy.
So now you've seen the clip and you see what's been happening there. The clip illustrates not only the specific reasons that led to the protests, but also the rapid growth of the movement from local protests to a global one. The first of its kind spread due to digital technology. Using social media, people from inside the borders of Iran shared protest videos in real time and framed the world outside of Iran to document state violence and resistance to the protests in Iran. As Asma Maha states in her research, the circulation of videos created a form of digital feminist placemaking and allowed activism to create a collective identity and solidarity from outside the borders of Iran. This also relates to everything we have read and studied in the area of modern collective action. As Bennett and Zuckerberg explain, the movement was characterized as a connective action. It was not necessary to become a member of a formal, centralized movement in order to participate in collective action. Mobilization was largely driven by a shared ideology and an increasing number of social media users participating in the movement. The digital strategy of the movement was matched by the state strategy. As Pegah Bahashimi shows in her research, the Iranian state controlled the same communication networks used by the movement in order to surveil activism, as well as implement targeted internet blackouts to suppress movement activities. This footage illustrates the dual character of technology in authoritarian situations. On one hand, it is a powerful grassroots of organization and global outreach, and on the other, it is a powerful tool in the hands of the state for repression and control. To sum up the Woman Life Freedom movement, has illustrated that we can no longer regard the internet as a wholly positive and democratic force. It has a dark side indeed, although social media and feminist digital placemaking have reduced the participation threshold and have expanded the reach. They, in particularly in the Iranian contents, provided the state with novel means of economic control, surveillance, and violence through internet blackouts. As the interplay between technology and social movements becomes more intricate, we are reminded that the contemporary human rights activism is linked to digital rights activism. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.